got in the Air Force. I graduated from nursing school. Judy and I was working at a state hospital for the mentally insane, they called it. And the only way you could get ahead there was if someone had died and you could take their position. So this other fellow and myself, we'd gone through the same school together. And so we went down to New York City to enlist in the Army. And we were about 60 miles away when we went down to New York City, Whitehall Street, where the Army induction center is and things. And we talked to some people there. And here we are, two nurses already graduated, working and everything. And they couldn't give us the time of day, really. But they were filming a young lady who was she was going to go to nursing school. She hadn't gotten there yet. And at that time, the Army would pay a student to go. Only females, though. The males, they wouldn't pay. The females received a monthly income while they were going to nursing school. So anyway, we said we wanted to check into joining. So they gave us a stack of papers about like that. They said, well, go home, bring them back, and we'll talk to you. We said, go home and bring them back. We live 60 miles north of here. And they said, well, that's the only way we'll do it. So we went back home. So my buddy ran into the Air Force recruiter named Sergeant Stone. And Sergeant Stone took us out to the air base, local air base, treated us to steak dinner, arranged for our physical, and he said, I'll make out your paperwork. Where would I go? The Air Force was for me. I could see that there was a difference right away. So we joined the Air Force, both of us. And we both asked for the East Coast because that's where we live at home. And we both got Travis. If you don't know where Travis is, it's near San Francisco. Well, this talk about my air vac experience in Vietnam. And well, I'll let the video show tell itself here. Bob, turn it on, please. Yeah, sure. I got to thank Bob. Bob's been working harder on this than I have. He did the original films of it, the pictures of it, and then he's worked on this new one also. So that when we originally did it, it was down at the museum, of course, and this is the video of the museum, and we've put in other pictures to coincide with one of the things I was talking about, because down there where I was talking, we had another video showing these different pictures, which didn't come on the film that they were filming at the time. So, okay, Robert.
Yeah. He wanted to do this video rather than speak himself, and I think that's because he made everything up before and he wasn't sure he could tell the same story. And some of the people are here that weren't there, so this
right up front.
So normally,
Oh, Robert was up. You flew in Vietnam,
with
so
sciences, so you get me instead.
is that loud enough?
Already discussed.
No,
Louder.
To
louder.
Where we can go. Make sure you silenced your phones. After the event is over, we've got snacks and water over there, but as I tell everybody, your mama doesn't work here. So
More yet.
make sure you police up your area. And setting things on the display cases
That
is
is
a
it.
death penalty offense. Wall is outside where we
This is Mark. And
So,
he runs he's originated
tonight
the
we've
museum and
got
stuff, and
Art with
and
us, who
caretaker.
served in the Army and in the Air Force. He's going to talk to you about his experiences in medical air evacuation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Art.
I'm glad I don't have to say this all over again. First of all, I thank some people that helped me put this together. Bob Hendricks, where'd Bob go? He's in the background.
There he is.
And Diane Sondergeld over here. Diane was helping me with Paul Saunders in here.
There she is.
And then also Mark helped me put some stuff together too. Thank you. Thank you all. I was involved in medevac in at the Philippines and also Vietnam. Medevac, the definition of it is timely, efficient movement and en route care provided by medical personnel to wounded from battlefield to treatment facility. And it's a process, really, of evacuation is a process. There are different stages in it. First stage would be forward. That's where the helicopter goes out. You get that on board in the film. And
Fine.
you have the stages. You got to slide on the stages.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was trying to see if that was cut off for just a second. I guess that's just the way it is. Okay.
This is the old type ambulance, and they still use this, picking up wounded. These are the stages of, you can turn the film on back on again.
Okay.
Provides life-saving interventions at the scene. That's forward. Helicopter, then with MedTech, will take that particular wounded person to a field hospital. The second portion of that is tactical. That's an intra-theater portion of medevac. And that's from a field hospital to a staging unit, which is just outside the battle zone. And at the staging unit, they're caring for people for evacuation, maybe out of the country also at that point. Another stage is strategic, and that's inter-theater, and that would be like from where I was at Cameron Bay to Japan or to the Philippines, where they moved wounded. And the last stage is domestic, that's within the United States. So people that would be evacuated to Japan, wounded, would be hospitalized there for a short period of time, and then if they weren't going back to duty, then they would be shipped to the States for like hospitals like Walter Reed, Travis in California, places like that, larger hospitals with more facility for treatment and special procedures. Each patient wounded that would come to our staging unit has a patient tag.
There, you're supposed to be giving me a cue.
Yep. No? No, that's a forward tag. Okay, this is the patient tag looking at it. This is a modern one.
Yes.
Ours wasn't this full of different. Each patient had a tag attached to them. Those things in. To tell. You can see where the torsos are. Where the wounds were. On the torso would indicate where the person was wounded, what kind of, what area, and then when you picked up that tag, you had wounded in your facility, you knew exactly where his wounds were. On the back of that tag would be the continued process of treatment, like when he came to us, what would we do for him, like change his dressings, if he had a temperature, if we gave him something for his temp or painkillers, things like that. So that would be all recorded. His treatment would be recorded on the reverse of that. The Air Evac dates back to World War I, really. They have documented a case where someone was airlifted on a biplane. I don't know whether they strapped him to the wing or he sat in the back seat, but that was documented. Somebody was real proud of that at the time. In World War II, the medevac didn't exist at the beginning of the war. It was considered dangerous, medically unsound, and militarily impossible. But at the end of it, they found out differently. They used helicopters at the end of World War II. In Korea, everybody remembers MASH on TV. Helicopters are always coming in and dropping off patients, and what was her name? Now the nurse would be running around.
Hot lips.
Hot lips, yeah. Hot lips running around. And maybe all having affairs and stuff like that. And then what's the sergeant's name who arranged everything? What was it?
Radar.
Radar, yeah. In Korea, they did use helicopters. but not as much as you think and you saw on television. They were mostly moved still by a lot of the vehicle at that time. And that's because the MASH units traveled with the line of battle. They weren't that far back. Even though they weren't that far back, it sometimes took them 3 to 4 hours to get a wounded from where they were wounded to the field hospital, like MASH. In Vietnam, that was a different situation. It was a different war. It was all guerrilla warfare. There are no lines of battle that they could look at. And because of that, they used helicopters 90% of the time. In Vietnam, 58,000 were killed, and 75,000 were severely disabled, 5,200 something lost their limbs, and 3 million served in Vietnam. And most of them were there for at least a year. Some of them were there for 2 and 3 tours. I met a sergeant in the Army, and he was there for 3 tours with, he had a squad, and they would go out on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, plastic explosive on the side of vehicles, and then when he went along the road, the other guys in his squad would shoot at it and explode it and blow up the vehicle. And he had gone through 15 guys in his squad for the times he was there. And what he would do would be, I was in Udorn at that time, TUI, and what he would do is he'd bring his squad to Udorn for a week and pay for everything. The helicopters, the med techs on the helicopter, their life expectancy was pretty short because they were going into fire at wherever they went in most of the time. And they would attend to the wounded at that particular time, looking at breathing, bleeding, and shock. So they take care of those, and that is life-saving. The helicopters and med techs at that point in time were able to get the wounded back to a field hospital in 35 to 40 minutes. So that's really life-saving.
Compared to hours during Korea.
That's called the golden hour. If they could get the wounded back to a medical facility in that particular time, then their chances of recovery went way up. And, that was the good thing about the helicopters and being able to evacuate. When the helicopters evacuated, they would bring their wounded back to a field hospital, and then our medevac groups would go all over Vietnam picking up the wounded. In 1969 was the peak for medical evacuation. 200,000 casualties were evacuated by air transport during that time. I was there in May of '69 to May of '70, and I was part of that evacuation. The outfit I belonged to was the 903rd Medevac. We were stationed at Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam.
The map I gave you, the Cam Ranh Bay is
And
down
we had
the
station
southern
units
part
all over.
of Vietnam. And all those different locations where we flew in and picked up wounded. It points out all the different dispensaries, field hospitals, things like
Where's
that.
Cam Ranh Bay?
Cam Ranh Bay's down the bottom there, yeah.
Right bottom.
Not at the very bottom, no.
Where your thumb is.
About 1/3 up.
One third
Right
of
there,
it.
right there, yeah.
No, it's farther down than that.
No, I heard
No, it's right here.
About 2/3 down from the top.
Yeah, Cam Ranh Bay is
Oh,
I
right
know.
there.
right here.
Okay, thank you,
Right
About
there.
4 o'clock.
thank you.
Yeah, about 4 o'clock.
I know.
Okay, Cam Ranh Bay.
That's where you were.
That's where I was stationed, yeah. We flew out of there in a different type of aircraft, 130, 123 C7s, 118, and 141s. Yeah. Used all those different aircraft. They had facilities to put litters in every one of those. They had to be reconfigured, each aircraft did, for that purpose. Because most of the time those aircraft were used for shipping around different things, equipment, things like that. So when they flew into us, we had to reconfigure it, and we had packets put in to each one of those different aircraft for all our supplies, and each time we landed, we had to offload all that stuff too, each time at the end of the day. So those aircraft weren't really assigned particularly to us. We just got what we were handed, particularly for that.
And from there, they'd go to Philippines, something like that, the 135s, et cetera.
No, 118s went to Philippines, yeah, for us. Okay. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. The first ones came in 1966, a group from Japan came through the Philippines, and they started units in Da Nang, Penang, Cam Ranh Bay, Nha Trang. Da Nang's way up north. And another one in Vong Tau. I gave you a map of all these places. Take a look at that. And there's approximately 25 different locations on that map that we picked up wounded. In 1967, a group from Polk Air Force Base in the States here went to Vietnam, and they started a unit, self-contained unit at Phuket, which was supposed to be one of the first staging units in that area. That was a couple of years after the war really started heating up. I did put it on 65 to start up, and they got there in 67. The aircraft that we used for Vietnam, okay. That is a bus, camp bus. That would back up to the plate, and they'd fill that up and bring it to staging units, kind of like at Clark. Yeah, that's, yeah, it took about 25 litters. That's a air vac bus, and we back that up to the aircraft and unload that into the aircraft to take to the next destination. Would be a bigger field hospital. Also, that same type of bus was used at the staging unit in the Philippines where I was at. And each night, they'd back one of these buses up full of wounded, and we'd offload them and take care of them.
So Art, the bus is going up into the aircraft?
It just backs up to the tailgate of the aircraft,
and
a ramp.
Litters of books that are in that bus?
There's litters in the bus, yeah. They're stacked, 3 high.
Wow.
They're
And
stretched.
that's like a stretcher, you see?
It's a stretcher, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And each aircraft had their own personnel assigned to it, their own nursing staff, med techs?
No,
No.
it was just
It
the
was
group you were assigned.
whoever.
You came in the morning, you were given an assignment, where you're gonna go, how many patients you're gonna pick up, all your stops and unloads.
Okay.
Yeah. The 130 was 5 high, 5 litters high. And, well, we'll talk about that a little later. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Robert. One that flew from Clark to, from Vietnam to Clark and come back and go in country with a C-118, which is a smaller plane. It was only 24 litters could fit in that. And then our larger aircraft was a 130, and 74 beds or litters could be fit in that. And we were full a lot of times. 74 in, we had to stack them 5 high. We had one of our nurses, Joe Pecolillo, and he was a little short Italian guy. He had to stand on top of the first litter in order to put the litter up on the 5th one. So it was always a joke for Joe to get the 5th litter up without falling or anything. Yeah. During the Tet Offensive, which was in '68, the first Tet Offensive, there was 2 of them. There was a tornado alert during this thing, so this is what the noise is.
Kept going on.
That's overhead.
I thought I had turned it off.
That trigger.
During the Tet Offensive, 1,000 wounded was evacuated in 30 days. And first part of '69, 9,000 were evacuated, and 958 were evacuated in one single day.
I was part of that busy time, and our 130s were full to the fifth litter all the time. Quezon was the bloodiest battle, and one of our nurses was in Quezon at the time, Bob Webster, his name was, and Bob broke down during that time. He was hospitalized in a psychiatric place.
C-130s would
My
take you
first
where?
experience at
Or
Air.
does C-130s take your patients? They would take them out of Vietnam and go?
Oh, no, this was just in Vietnam for 130s.
Oh, okay.
And the only one that went outside of Vietnam was the 118 and the 141. And that was, but earlier in 67, around there, they flew 130s to Clark, full of wounded. I was at Clark during that time.
That was not in Vietnam. My first experience was at Clark. And I went to Clark in 1965, November to November 67. And it was supposed to be an accompanied tour. That means your wife can go with you. So anyway, we originally had orders for Japan, which would have been a nice assignment. But 15 days before we were supposed to rotate, I went down to get new orders, or go down to get orders to put in our luggage so that they would ship to the right place. And the sergeant down there said, well, these aren't your orders. I said, what do you mean it's not my orders? Look at my name's right on and everything else. He says, they didn't tell you that they canceled those and gave you new ones. You're going to Clark Air Base in the Philippines instead of Japan. And so Judy was going to come to the Philippines with us. It took 9 months for us to get housing before she could come. And then when she came, she left New York, flew to Seattle. 2 kids, age 4 and 2. There was a strike, so she couldn't fly to San Francisco. She took a 24-hour bus with 2 little kids down to San Francisco, another bus out to the Travis Air Force Base, get on a plane, and fly to the Philippines. It was a 16-hour flight. Thank you, dear. At Clark was a 200-bed hospital, and we also had a 125-bed vac unit, the safety unit there. I was ordered to Clark because they were in dire need of a psychiatric nurse, and when I got at Clark late in the afternoon, I went to the club, or first went to the billing office, so they give me temporary billing, which was near the club, so I went to the club and I had food.
Yes.
You got the Negrito thing coming up.
You ready for that? Okay. Here you go. You wanna talk about it now, or we?
Yeah.
Eat stuff like that, and a lot of booze. And then it was dark, and I went back to my quarters, the temporary building quarters, and I walked up, and I was putting the key in the door, and opened it up, and I saw something in the corner of my eye up here in motion. I looked up, and here's a Negrito village person with a bow and arrow in his hand, looking down at me, smiling. The Negritos were an indigenous Indian in the Philippines. They originally owned all the land that the base was built on. And during World War II, they served as security for the base. And there was a story about how the base commander fired all the Negritos because he didn't want them on base any longer and he didn't need their security. But the king of the Negritos said, yes, you do need our security, and we will prove it to you. So, how are you going to prove it to us? We'll show you. So, the Negritos went in and into the barracks and lifted up all the shoes and put a big X on the bottom of all the shoes of the guys up in the barracks. So
During the night when they were
next morning,
sleeping.
The king asked them to come up, have all the enlisted people in the barracks to come out in formation, and he said, lift up your shoe. And there was the X on the shoe. He says, now you know you need our security. And they were there during World War II. MacArthur made the king of the Negritos, his name was Alphonse, King Alphonse, made him a major general. And along with that,
he gave them all rights to the base. That means the Negritos could have the hospital, they had the hospital, the ex-commissary, all those kind of things. They could use everything. But the thing they wanted most was the dump. Why would you want the dump? Well, that's where all the big boxes came, wooden boxes that they used for huts. Not only that, all raw materials like aluminum tubing, they made blowguns out of that. Other metals, they made knives, bow and arrows, and they sold all those to the GIs so they could make money.
I have a knife that I brought back from survival school.
Yeah, Bob was in the Philippines for survival school.
And I have a knife that was supposedly made from old leaf springs from a vehicle with a wooden scabbard.
So it sell your trash back to you.
Yeah, right.
I didn't just give it to you.
I had, everybody got a blowgun. I had a blowgun. It used to be fun. You were in the barracks, you know, we'd set up targets and have contests with them and things like that. That was, and they really worked well.
So is that what he's doing there? Making that stuff?
That's actually a Negrito.
Oh, an agreement. Well,
Yeah, that's what they,
guys,
He's showing how to make
they're
fire.
small people, about that tall, some of them, and, except for the, king's son was fairly tall. He was really tall, that I got to know, while I was there. And, well, go ahead.
This guy is demonstrating how to make a fire.
Yeah.
Fire.
And not by rubbing two Boy Scouts together, but, and, step two.
Okay.
And there's a fire.
Yeah.
And he did it the hard way.
Of course, they wore all American clothes because they'd go to the BX and buy all that stuff, you know, they had all the privileges of the base.
Okay.
They were dumb. As I say, I was there because they were dire need of a psychiatric nurse. Well, I reported in to the chief nurse. Her name was Dink Blocks. And Dink was kind of a hardy old broad, you know, tough, you know. And she had a dog. She played golf. She had a Scotty dog. And we thought the dog's name was SOB. I won't say it out because all over the golf course, all you could hear was Dink hollering, "Come on, you SOB! Come on, get over here, you SOB!" She was tough broad. So she assigned me to the hemodialysis team instead of psychiatry. And I knew nothing about hemodialysis. That's where they exchange the blood, clean the blood out, put it back in the system again. And it was experimental at that time. We had these big stainless steel tanks and filters in them, stuff like that. And I had 7 patients. And during that, I was there for that week. And during that week, 5 of them died of my shift. Oh, boy, I tell you that. Even today, it bothers me. And I said, you know, what am I doing wrong? You know, why can't I keep these guys alive? Well, I wasn't alone. I had a doctor on the unit. He slept down in a room down the corridor from us down the hall. And every time somebody started to go sour, I'd run down to get them and come back and we'd work on that person. But we couldn't do any good. You know, that was their last chance to stay alive, to be on hemodialysis and clean their blood out. Terrible, helpless feeling. Didn't work for us. After that, I guess they felt sorry for me, so they sent me to the burn room. And that's where the guys who burned a good part of their body. And my job was to change the dressings all the time. And also keep their IVs going, do any urines and stuff like that on them. And I would shoot them up with morphine, wait a while until it was effective, and start pulling off their dresses. A lot of times when I pulled off their dresses, the skin came with it. Yeah. And what skin didn't come off and it was loose, I debrided it with scissors, just cut it down so that it could have fresh skin. And we used a thing called potassium permanganate. It's a purple loose solution. And so we had to cover the room with plastic because this purple would get in everything. And at the end of a tour, your whole front of my uniform was all purple, down to the underwear a lot of times. And, I stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then they must have felt sorry for me again, so they sent me.
Okay, what you just saw there, when they recorded this, they could only record about 20 minutes at a time, then they have to stop.
Yeah, there's a break in
I'm
it.
not sure how much was missed. When I reviewed it, there were some things that I remembered that weren't in this video. And so you'll notice there's a break in the action, so to speak, that you don't see. And there's actually 5 of these, so you'll see that break from time to time. So this is probably not related to
So
what he was talking about.
what was your next, I think that's part of what we missed, was your next assignment after the burn ring?
Oh, after the burn, I went to chest and neuro, where a lot of chest wounds. At that time, we used what they call underwater drainage type thing in order to get the fluid out of the chest or out of the abdomen and into these bottles without air getting back into the body again. And then the neuro cases, a lot of them were in coma at that time. So, but that was. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I was gonna say, that's something that you won't see on this, what he just told you, because I don't think I'm not sure where this begins, but you see it's not continuous.
So, but that was the chest and neuro was pretty good. It was more relaxed. It wasn't as tense and stressful caring for the patients. Patients were alert, and conversations between each other was good. And their wounds, although chest wounds, they were there for a while already, and they were healing and doing well. I had no deaths on that unit. While I was on that unit, I became a charge nurse, and after a week or two, learning the procedures, and they had confidence that I could manage the place, I was notified that General Westmoreland would be coming on the unit. And it was my job to find out who had not received their Purple Hearts yet. And I'd write down their names and their hometown, and then when General Westmoreland came in, I would escort him around and introduce him to the guys who didn't receive the Purple Hearts and he pinned the Purple Hearts on them. He was a real gentleman. His wife and daughter were Red Cross workers on that same unit, and they would bring us coffee and cookies and stuff like that all the time. It was really neat. Yeah. One time I had this second lieutenant who was new to our unit. She was working, and I was in charge of her that day. And Mrs. Westmoreland came up and asked her if she wanted coffee, and we gave her a cookie and stuff like that. So I said to her, I said, "Gee, you must feel really proud today." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "You're just served by Mrs. Westmoreland." And she said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that." During that time, I finally got over the site for a little bit, and I was working on the site. We had when I was on that unit, that's on the 4th floor of the hospital, and one day we had an earthquake, and it felt like the whole thing was going like that. I'm telling you, it scared the daylights out of everybody. And it threw beds from one side of the room to the other, along with the oxygen tanks and everything else. It was really scary. And they had, of course, earth tremors there quite frequently. That was the first time I had ever felt earth tremors. The first one, I was sitting on a weight machine, and all of a sudden, everything started rocking. You know, I was, what's going on, you know? And somebody said, "Well, that's an earthquake, just a shiver." So, but later on, the volcano erupted. I don't know what year that was. In the late 80s, maybe, and then no, 80s sometime.
No,
It erupted and covered the whole base with 3 foot of ash.
Now, which country are you in?
Philippines.
Oh, Philippines.
Yeah.
is that Mount Pinatubo? Or?
Yeah, Mount Pinatubo.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if that earthquake was related to that,
Yeah.
tremors from that.
And the Air Force moved out, the US moved out of the base and everything else and gave it back to the Filipinos. They were wanting it since World War II anyway. And then when the Filipinos got it back, of course, they cleaned up all the ash, made it a resort out of it. There was a hotel there, and they took the hotel, made that a tax-free port, and people fly in, buy all kinds of stuff. And there's golf course there that they have, and around the golf course they have all these small huts like that they rent out, and of course the Filipinos they love the U.S. getting out of there. Yeah. Some psych patients coming in, and one of the patients that was coming in was a 1A patient. And all the patients were in categories, like 1 was for psychiatry, 2 was surgery, and 3 was ambulatory. So we had a 1A psych patient that was supposed to be maybe aggressive, needed some sedation, and was in restraints, wrist and ankle restraints. So they brought him in, and the litter was on the floor, and so I introduced myself and everything and see how he was doing. He was pretty lucid, really, I thought, you know. And so anyway, I reached down and I pulled back the blanket, and I'm looking down at a 45 sitting in his lap. Yeah. And I jumped back, I said, whoa! And he said, oh, don't worry, it's not loaded. I have the bullets in my pocket. But everything turned out all right there. Then after a week or so there, they sent me on down to the staging unit. That's the air evac staging. We had 6 wards, 25 beds each, and 2 were surgical, 1 psych, 1 ortho, 1 was medicine, which was mostly malaria patients at that time. And then an additional ambulatory unit also. These are guys that I worked the surgical unit, the non-ambulatory one, and a lot of these guys were coming in still in their uniforms. Some had their weapons with them on the litter even. And at that time in '65, we hadn't really established any airback stuff for bringing in wounded that I know of. And I wonder how they got there, really. You know, that this was early, and somebody brought them in by plane. But they were still in their uniforms. So those stages that we went through, they're not always concrete. You may jump from one stage to another stage without going through being cared for in a particular area. So, when they came in, that bus that you saw, that would back up to our ward. I and my tech, I only had 1 tech, and he had a buddy that was a mechanic, and the mechanic used to come help us once to unload the bus and stuff. I would go out, and he would go out, we'd grab the litters and bring them into the unit. There was also a couple other guys on the bus who also did that. And then once we got them in bed, got their uniforms off, things like that, got them cleaned up, and then it was time to do the dressings. And most of the times they had more than 1 wound on them. So my job was to take the old dressing off, and I would irrigate the wound with hydrogen peroxide and saline, and then stuff the wound with gauze and wrap it. I can still see one of the wounds. The guy had a wound on his thigh, and it was the whole length of his thigh. And he had a bleeder in there, it was bleeding. And my tech that worked with me was an OR tech, so he knew how to tie off the bleeder, so he did that, which was good, yeah. Otherwise, I would have had to send him up to the main hospital. I had a few patients that came in, which when we went out to the bus to check, I triaged everybody out there first before bringing them in. And then a few times I had to send people up to the main hospital because they didn't look good. Their vital signs were poor, cold, clammy, and something like that. And, so I would call up the main hospital, talk to the doctor up there, and said, yep, send them up. So we would send them up, no problem. The wound wounds that we were caring for, taking care of, usually were a gunshot wound, shrapnel, and a punji stick. A punji stick is
Punji stick, Phil?
anytime you put these on the ground, and the tall grasses sometimes dig a pit in the ground. And tall grasses, they put them like that when our men run through the tall grass, it would stab them. And the ones in the ground, they would fall in the trench, and this thing would go right through their boot, right through their foot, and out again and get them.
Bob's got a
An
couple other
example.
pictures for punji sticks.
That's specific, PACAF Jungle Survival School. So these are not real, they're simulated traps. If you can get an idea of
Here.
what they're. So,
Yeah, these are wires coming out. You walk along and your foot would go down in there, and these wires would just grab a hold of you and penetrate your skin.
of course, that would be covered with something that was.
Camouflage.
Yeah, so you wouldn't know it was there, and all of a sudden, surprise.
Poisons?
Well,
Yeah, there's another.
there's another
example.
trap there too. This wouldn't be around, that's just to keep people out of that for demonstration. But you can see how they really sharpen the ends of a piece of bamboo and how they'd go right through the boot of the GI when they first got there, because they didn't have a steel shaft in the bottom or a shank in the bottom of the boot. And then afterwards, though, they started making boots differently, and so that they avoided some of the stuff, but they still got those other ones that your foot went down in a trap and got you.
Yeah, they
They're
have
really nasty.
the guardrails, because they didn't want one of their students falling into one of those.
Yeah, okay.
But, and they wouldn't look like this, of course. And another example, which would be covered up, of course, is a hole here. And it's kind of like stepping on a rake or something, except there's the top end of the rake. And now this, if you ever saw one of these, well, go ahead.
Yeah, this would be a bridge, and the troops would walk over this bridge, and this would all collapse, and they'd end up impaled on the bamboos.
Although I would suspect if you were trudging through the jungle and you saw something that nice, you'd be a little suspicious. So
Yeah.
they wouldn't look like that.
And there's water underneath?
No,
No.
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 Oh, just,
Maybe a gully or
Yeah.
something.
well, there
gully?
would be, it'd be just, probably just a swamp there maybe. And these could even be covered with water, really, yeah, that was probably it. And then when that would collapse, and then they get impaled on it.
Okay.
You start that up again, Doug,
Yeah.
the other one.
That's can't, go ahead.
The Viet Cong would put feces material or poison on these things.
And that's what you're
They're
asking,
really
they
sharp.
put feces on it or poison.
So that was the kind of wounds we were taking care of most of the time. Our troops, as I said before, would step on those things and they go right through the shoe. And that was because they didn't have, the shoes didn't have a steel shank in them at the beginning of the war. And we finally got wise to that, and they manufactured the boots with a steel shank in them. And that prevented a lot of the punji sticks in the foot. But then the Viet Cong devised other ways for the trap, for the punji sticks also. You know, they would cover up a booby trap, and a foot would go down into this booby trap and close up on the sides of the foot and the ankle, and cause infections that way. When we, as I said, we had patients come in, we would unload them, get them cleaned up, and I would do the dressings and then get them fed, and then it was time for antibiotics and painkillers at that point in time. Some of the guys that came in, we were able to get out of bed, put in a wheelchair, take to a shower, which was really nice at the time. And at the end of the meal, we always came around with a can of beer and gave it to everybody. So they were really like that part. Sometimes we were shy of help and I would get 2 units. I would get like a psych unit, orthopedic, sometimes I had orthopedic, malaria, and man, I was really wanting that. It was really stressful. So that we didn't have enough nurses to go around, nor did we have, like Red Cross workers and things like that there. Sometimes we were short in the pharmacy for antibiotics, especially, and what we started doing was to develop our own pharmacy. Wounded that came in from Vietnam would come with 5 days of medication. We only were required to discharge them on 3 days of medication. So we would steal from them, put them in envelopes, and give them to other guys. So we had to do things like that. Sometimes I worked a 12 to 8 shift, and on 12 to 8 shift was prepping the wounded for discharge in the morning to air back for a trip to Japan or the United States or Clark. We would order all the equipment that was necessary for the flight and prepare 3 days of medication, as I said before, and then early in the morning we served breakfast. And sometimes when we didn't have a lot of patients, us nurses and the techs all got together and we would cook the bacon and eggs fresh. We put on bacon, eggs, and toast for them. And it was rewarding for us to be able to do it for the guys. And they would be loaded on the bus, taken flight line, and shipped out. Then it was all cleanup time. And it clean up all the beds, all the units, and get ready for the next ship to come in at 4 in the afternoon usually. And that was day after day after day. During my stay there in March and April, around that time, we had 3,000 to 5,000 wounded coming through there. So that sometimes we changed beds twice in one day. We would get a shipment of wounded in the morning, we would take care of them and get them out. And before the next shipment came in the evening, and so it was a struggle time. A couple of incidents that I had while I was there is that one time I was off duty and they called me and they wanted me to come down to the psych unit because they were missing a Negrito and a GI. And it's suspected that Negrito took them over to the village. So they supplied an interpreter for me, and we drove over to the Negrito village, which was comprised of just, the cardboard boxes about that tall, because the people were only that tall. They were short. And so the interpreter went to one of the men there and asked where these 2 people were. So they pointed out where they were, and so I went over there and I went in and said hi to them, and they were sitting there eating rice and drinking Pepsi-Cola, and they invited me to join them. So I did. And after I finished my rice and my Pepsi, I said, "Okay, boys, it's time to go." And they got up and came with me, no problem at all. We went back to the unit. Another, during the Philippines, the elections, Judy and I be at the house we were off base living, and during election time you could hear automatic gunfire all the time. It was that's how they got rid of their opponents there, I guess. One day I was leaving our area where we lived, and there was a big commotion. I went on over, and our landlord had been killed, shot with a shotgun. Somebody didn't like her. Or she didn't pay up her draft, everything was, you had to pay the police, you had to pay, all kinds of people. Every time you took your car someplace, you had to pay somebody to guard it. So that kind of thing went on. Then in 1969, it was Ho Ho Vietnam. And I was assigned to Cameron Base, as I said before. and the 903rd back. And
That's a picture of Cameron Bay over there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a real pretty bay, really beautiful area. The water was just crystal clear, blue. It was really nice. It was nice diving there, snorkeling. Yep. Units that were at Cameron Bay was the 12th USAF hospital, the 26th casualty staging flight, and the 6th convalescent. 6th convalescent was Army. These guys were convalescing and they'd be put back to duty. During the Vietnam War, there was a large percent of people that were injured, but were treated and sent back to duty. I think it was like 49%. Other wars was like 20, 29%, 30 the most. There's the learning again. I don't know why they put it on mute.
I did.
It's a beautiful bay, really. And we had the Officers Club beach, we had the NCO beach, things like that there. We would have to be down there swimming. When I went to the Philippines, I got myself some snorkeling outfit, and I'd go snorkeling there. And there was big manta rays, all kinds of fish. It was gorgeous, really. That's Cameron Bay. And the Hilton Hotel they had plans to put hotels up here on this beach after the war.
I take it that was not the Hilton.
That's not the hill.
No, that's my hooch. And I'll tell you the story about that. When I got to Vietnam, my organization had this building that they had everyone housed in, and it was a bunk with open, it was all open bay, open showers, things like that. And they were real proud of it because I guess it was better than the dirt floor type thing because they had a cement floor and everything else into it. And it wasn't open to the weather, where some of the other guys lived in these huts that were open to the weather, especially the enlisted guys. And so anyway, the first night they took me up to the building place they had called RMK Hill, and gave me a bunk, and I slept in that bunk. Sand was every place. And although the beach was there, it was everywhere because that's all there was on the whole island was sand. And the sand was in your bunk when you went to sleep at night. And so anyway, I woke up the next morning and I'm out taking a shower. And while I'm taking a shower, 3 maids walk in with their laundry, doing the laundry for the guys that are housed there, and they do the laundry right alongside where I'm taking a shower. It was a little different cultural shock for me. That's my bunk, you know. Yeah, this is a trailer that I lived in, small trailer. Rocket attack, I rolled out of that bunk, got my flak jacket on, my helmet and everything else in a hurry. After that, you know, after 2 or 3, just take your time. Figured if the rocket hit that hooch, I wouldn't have to worry about a flak jacket. Or a helmet. Yeah. When I was oriented, I went to the office and they oriented me to things at the office and what I was going to be doing and what flights I would have and what gear I needed. One of the things that took me there was a blood chip. And I was to carry a blood, this is one similar to the one I have, but not exactly like it. But I ordered this from the eBay. But the blood chip I was supposed to carry with me because it said on there that
That's C-H-I-T. C-H-I-T. Okay.
Oh.
I was found and I was returned. Whoever found me would get $10,000. So I was worth something.
Part of that was, you know, you got your nurse's kit and everything else. And I was going to be assigned to fly, and I had an instructor and I had to certify you qualify for flight. And the first one I was to ride in for qualification was a 130. And you sat in kind of like canvas seats along the sidewalk. And by the time we got to the end of the flight line, I was asleep. That's part of motion sickness that you do that. So after a while, though, it didn't bother me. I was able to fly without getting motion sickness. The other aircraft we flew in was a 118. Now, in order for me to qualify for the 118, I had to go to sea survival because the 118 flew over water to Clark Air Base all the time. So they sent me to Okinawa for sea survival training, and that was a lot of fun. I liked swimming in the water and stuff like that. One of the pleasures there was parasailing, and they took you up and you had a parasail, and they took you in a flat top boat, and it had like a baseball cage in the back, and they hooked you up to a parachute, and that parachute filled up into this cage, and a rope from your harness went out to a boat, and they took off. And the person who took off in front of me got 2 steps, went off the side, and boom, bam, broke a leg. And I said, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. So they got me up there, and I went up. It was the greatest feeling ever, really, going up in that thing. And got to about 500 feet, and at 500 feet, you're supposed to pull yourself loose or from the tow rope. And then you were supposed to come down, and just before you hit the water, you had to pull your chutes so that your chute would loose, would let go. That way it would drag you across the water and drown you. And then after that, you got your one-man raft out, you pumped that up, you got it all pumped up, and you got into that, and then you threw out your shark repellent. Well, we were supposed to be there 2 hours. I picked us up in 30 minutes because there was too many sharks. Another aircraft was a 123, and the 123, they had 40 for that, 40 litters to carry that, but that was used more on some dirt strips, and wherever there was a shorter landing strip, and needed their short runs, and they had fewer patients. The C-7A was down in Von Tau. That's at the bottom of your map there. Way down south there. Yeah, up in here. And that's the southern part. And I qualified in that. That aircraft was used in the Delta area for small landing strips and had Ken was in the Delta area.
Right on the Mekong building. We had CBs outside our gate, and they took off on fast-moving boats to patrol the Mekong.
And gunships.
Yep.
Yes, this.
The thing with going down to Von Tau and qualifying that aircraft, that Von Tau was the Australian R&R spot. There were Australian forces. It was full of Australians. And the guy that was in charge of our staging unit down there was a friend of mine. So we got to go out and party with the Australians and with R&R, and they invited me to go out sailing the next day that I was there. So I went out sailing with all the Australians and partied with them. And I'm telling you, they drink some horrible beer and a lot of it. Our routes in Vietnam, we had three different routes really. We came out of Cam Bay, went north all the way up to the DMZ on the map there, you can see that. All the way up north. And then circled back down through Saigon and then back to Cam Bay. And all along, we would pick up patients and drop patients off. Like, we would pick patients off all the way up to Da Nang and drop them off at the 95th Attack Hospital there. For the first med, and then we would continue on and then come back down along Lake 2, those areas a lot, and back to Saigon, where we would drop patients off in Saigon, pick some up, take them to Cameron Bay for a trip out of the country. That was, as you can see, there's hospitals all along the way there, like up on by the DMZ is Quantree, with the 3rd Medical, and Camp Evans, and on down the line. And at Cameron Bay, as I told you before, we had the 12 hospital, 26 cab, and the 6 CC. Yeah,
How
Bill?
many miles up to, from
To,
Fairborn Bay up
to the DMZ? I don't know. I never heard how far it was. Yeah.
What was the time for your round trip for making those? Was it
What's that?
like when you did like a trip like that? Was it a full day? Was it a
Yeah,
half
it
a
took the
day?
whole day to go on up and then come back down and around and come back down to Cameron Bay. So we left about 7 in the morning and got back about 5 in the evening.
You mentioned Quantree, and that's right up there, just below the DMC, you'll notice, actually, it's the first one listed on the map.
Yeah.
Very far.
The Clark flight was a flight that most people wanted, or out of C-118 to Clark, and it usually carried Korean. And the Koreans went through Clark because the Japanese wouldn't allow them to come to Japan. So they couldn't go out of 141s to Japan from Cameron Bay. And it was a boondoggle flight for us. We would fly in, have a day off, and then fly out the next day. And first time I went into Clark with our crew, there was no air-conditioned quarters at Clark for the male nurses and for the male techs. But the male techs all wanted to go downtown, you know, and because they had a lot of shows and stuff going on downtown, and a lot of business. And they would pick up monkey pods, which was real, well, the grunts, Army guys wanted a lot of monkey pod stuff so they could send home, you know. And so that the Air Force guys would load up the belly with aircraft with monkey pod, like Lazy Susans and cups and bowls and stuff like that, and plates and whatever. And San Miguel beer. San Miguel beer was a real popular beer then, and they would fill the belly of the aircraft up, fly back to Vietnam and sell it all. And they made some extra money that way. I told them I didn't like that, and I wouldn't allow them to charge the grunts a bunch of money for that. But I took Lazy Susan back one day myself for a trade. I had met this lieutenant colonel at a party, and he was from the Army, and at raid, it turned cold, and he was shivering and cold, and said, boy, I'd give anything to get a change of clothes. So I said, you know, my hooch mate is about your size, but he's only a second lieutenant. Would you mind wearing second lieutenant parts? He says, I don't care what. Frankie, it's just get me his change of clothes. So I did. We became friends, and he wanted Lazy Susan, and so I got him one. And so in return, he gave me 54 pounds of steak.
Oh, boy.
Because he was in charge of refrigeration. So we did things like that.
Does that remind you of the TV show?
What?
The radar, yeah.
Yeah, rare, yeah. Swapping things, everything else, yeah. There's more to it. I even threw in a case of San Miguel beer. Yeah, I even threw a case of your beer in. On the C-130 crew, we usually had 2 or 3 nurses and 3 to 5 techs. One of the nurses acted as a recording nurse, or took charge of all the paperwork on the patients, and for when we landed. So we would get, as I said before, the 74 litters we sometimes fill up, but most of the time after the big surge in the spring of '69, things slowed down around 70, so we were flying with a half load a lot of times, which was good for us and good for them too. My daily routine would be like getting up at 5:30 in the morning, getting something to eat, getting over to the office by 6:30, 7 o'clock, prep for the flight, get all our equipment ready on it, to go on to our bus. We would take a bus and go to the aircraft and then load the aircraft up with all our equipment. We would take liquids and food because the crew needed food because we're gone all day, and sometimes the wounded on board stayed there for quite a while. They needed food too and liquids. We would pick up our itinerary, find out where we're going to fly that day and how many patients we're going to pick up or drop off along the way. In loading the patients, they came out of the hospital and the staging unit at Cameron, and we would get a briefing by the nurse or tech who was coming with those patients before loading. And then we'd go ahead and triage them as they came on board also. The Clark Boondoggle, as I say, when I went there, they didn't have air-conditioned quarters for us, but I found out that the women had reserved air-conditioned quarters in the hotel behind the officers' club. And so the guys all complained about the women going to Clark more frequently than the men, twice as many days. And so they just complained about it, they didn't do anything. So I took upon myself to do some statistics, and I got all the statistics together and went to my boss and said, yes, guys are correct. Here's all the flights that were went to Clark, and here's the people that went on them, and this is how many times they went. He said, you're in charge of scheduling from now on. So when I was in charge of scheduling, I would go, but my crew was all males, because the males were all going downtown. The women who had the air-conditioned quarters weren't there. So when I went to the building office, I said, I want the 903rd building. And he said, oh, no, sir, that's ladies, reserved for ladies. I said, no ladies, come this time. He said, how do you know? He said, I said, I boss. Okay. So when we went into Clark, it was a boom building, as I say, and I used to go there and go to the building, change, shower, and everything else, and I go to the club, sit at the bar, have a dozen oysters and a couple beers, then move on into the dining room, have escargot, filet mignon, some wine. I mean, this is really living high, And then the next morning I get up and go play 18 holes of golf and do the meal thing all over again. Next morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, get up and fly back to Vietnam and pick up wounded all day long, and then come back to Cameron Bay.
Have you get fired on along the way on your trips around Vietnam?
As I said before, we had a few mortar attacks, but no, we didn't get fired on that much. We only got hit once, but didn't do really big damage. The one time almost did some really bad damage was somebody left a screwdriver in a wing for the elements, so wouldn't be able to move the flaps, wouldn't be able to land people. So that was the only bad problem we had, yeah. But the medevac, we didn't go in that low in a lot of places, so. When we flew pretty high, and then when we came in, they came down pretty
Steep, yeah.
Pretty steep, yeah.
Like Patrick.
But nothing really hit close to us. The 6CC, which was the other organization there on base, got attacked by Viet Cong one night. They had satchels and explosives, and they blew up a couple buildings, but nobody was in them. And so no one really got killed. That was fortunate. Which was really helpful. We had a few rocket attacks, but nothing like that. A lot of times when everyone took turns of standby, that would be, if they called you for an urgent to fly out any place, pick up, or take a patient somewhere. And one night, after flying all day long, we were at the club sitting around talking and stuff, and my boss was drinking a little bit, and I told him, I said, I'll take your urgent call tonight if you want. I said, that's fine. They go ahead and enjoy yourself. So at 9 o'clock, I got a call, and they said they had urgent 2 neuro cases going out to Japan. So I took the patients on board and evaluated and everything. They were in coma at the time, and it was just IVs and catheters, and some oxygen. And so flew to Japan, stayed there one night. Next morning, got a plane back to Clark, and next morning got a plane back to Vietnam. Flew all day long to Vietnam, picking up wounded. Another urgent I had was a C-130 flight to Antmoy Island, and that's an island off the coast of southeast or southwest coast of Vietnam. We went down there and picked up a woman who was pregnant, and we took her to Saigon, and then flew back to Cam Ranh Bay again. It didn't go on me at the time for us to have at 1:30 fly from Cam Ranh Bay to Antmoy Island, to Saigon, back to Cam Ranh Bay. This person must have been a VIP, and they didn't tell me that though at the time or anything. But for us to go through all of that for one person, and she wasn't injured, she wasn't in any dire need to deliver at that time or anything else, and she wasn't having any contractions or anything like that, but it was just transportation. One flight I had was 123 into a jungle area, a dirt strip, a small dirt strip, and I went in and picked up a load of Vietnamese. They were all Vietnamese, and all on litter, we had 40 litters. We loaded them up, and their families were coming on board. I said, "Oh, wait, you can't come on board." They said, "Oh yeah, we go with family, we go with wounded." And the reason why they did that was because when the wounded got to the hospital, wherever they were already cared for, the family had to take care of them, and they even cooked for them there times. So anyway, I talked to the engineer on the flight, and I said, you know, these Vietnamese are weigh about half as much as American does. And I said, so we could take double whatever we were taking. So, come on, let's go. We loaded up, we had to load up quick because we were in an area that was thought to be a Vietnam area. And that was the other reason I wanted to get them on plane quick. One of my friends had an incident. His name is Bill Barnes. He and I went to nursing school together, Judy also. And he was on a flight, and they loaded the wounded, and then they brought a body bag on. Threw that up on top of the aircraft for loading. And Bill said, "No, you can't take that. We weren't allowed to take body bags, only wounded." And there were 3 or 4 guys there, and they all had their M16s with them. And they said, "You're taking this body bag whether you like it or not, or we'll shoot you." And what it was this was their lieutenant who had been killed, and he'd been sitting out in the sun for 3 or 4 days. And they wanted him going. And so Bill took him, and he was reprimanded for it. But he was kind of dumb about it, really. When he got to our office, the headquarters, our CO said, "Would you do this again?" All he had to say was, "No, I probably wouldn't do it again." But he said, "Yeah, I'd do the same thing again." He was a kind of a stiff-necked guy, so okay, he got reprimanded. One of the other, you know, when you're over there, you're trying to make life better for yourself and more convenient, things like that. We had a CO in our outfit who wanted transportation. And only thing we had was a big old 24-passenger bus that we used to go back and forth to flight line. But she wanted to be able to go back to flight line more in the office and places like that. So she found our Army outfit, they could write off a Jeep as destroyed in action. So she met these guys, and they wanted an air conditioner for the Jeep. So she said, I was going to Clark at the time. She said, because she knew I went to commissary and places like that. She said, "You go buy us an air conditioner for these guys?" And so I went to Clark, picked up an air conditioner, brought it back, and we traded it for the Jeep. Another time I was walking back and forth between the flight line and our office, which is about a mile, and I'm walking by this transportation outfit, and they had, must have been 124 passenger buses sitting out there doing nothing. So I went in and I said, hey, what do you have to do to get one of these buses? And he said, oh, you have to have a license. I said, how do I get a license? He said, oh, just have somebody take you for a ride and show you how to work it and everything. So our NCO, who had the driver's license for our bus, I said, hey, take me for a ride and show me it so I can get a license. So he did, I got a license. And here's a captain driving around picking up guys on the flat line in a 24 passenger bus, and I had to drive around it all the time. Another thing, when I went there, I only had these boots, and everybody else had combat or jungle boots. So I went over to the clothing outlet place and talked to a guy who was in charge of clothing, and I said, hey, I want to get some jungle boots and some more camouflage outfits. He says, any way I can get those? I said, I go on the air back to Clark quite frequently. He said, oh, you go to Clark, can I get a ride? I said, yeah, sure, I'll get you on. So, being you were charging us on the flight, you were in charge of everything. It was like you could bring anybody on you wanted. So I arranged for him to be part of our crew. He got a ride to Clark. I got new boots and camouflage outfits. Another thing, you saw the picture of my patio here. I don't know which one's that there. That's my patio. See all those bricks? They had a self-help program. I could order things through the civil engineers, triple nickel, and I put a request in for 800 bricks. But I didn't know that those bricks that they had were twice as big as a regular brick. So I got 300 bricks, and being as I knew how to drive a 2.5 ton, 5 ton truck, Army style stuff, they let me take a truck, loaded it up with my bricks, and I took it to my patio here and built my patio. I also built a barbecue pit on the other side of the table right there. The story behind that table is I saw I wanted the table, so I saw a pile of wood by the Officers Club beach. So I got a Dukes and a half truck, went over and I was picking wood up, throwing it up in the back of the truck, and I looked down, and here's the picnic bench. The only thing wrong was one broken board on it. So I had the board, so that's my picnic bench I got from the pile.
I'm a radar.
When I went to Clark, I would buy Italian sausage, and my boss liked daiquiri, so I would bring back those things to Cameron Bay. Did I tell you about the sausage and bread? No? Okay. Well, when I came back from Clark, I had some Italian sausage, and tomato sauce, and I liked sausage and bread and like a hoagie type thing. So I would ride around, we'd take our flight, and I'd come back, and one of the stops was Saigon. On our way back in, we'd pick up wounded. And I would call ahead at Saigon and say, put 4 loaves of bread on for me. It was the French bread. And so anyway, when I got back, they put it on and I picked it up, and I'd get back to Cameron Bay, and I had a little cooker in my room, and I'd cook up Italian sausage. I had sauce with it. And my next door neighbor, he was a minister who used to go to the vegetable area of Vietnam all the time, and he'd bring me peppers and onions. So I had peppers and onions all the time, and I'd cook up the peppers and onions and the Italian sausage and the sauce and put it in the bread, and sausage and peppers. It was great. My boss was there one day, so I invited him for it. And the next day, the next time I was going to Clark, he called up and said, are you going to Clark this week? I said, yeah. He says, I'll be up with the bread. Because I did the leisure, you try to make the best of your situation in leisure time. It wasn't a lot. We had tennis courts. I played tennis quite a bit, and racquetball, and then the beach and snorkeling and stuff like that. It was so my assignment to Vietnam wasn't a painful one, really. The one that was more stressful and everything was at Clark, caring for the wounded there. That's my story. What's that? Oh, This is not Wang Tao. They had ice cream down there. Yeah. Life is tough. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Any questions?
Yeah, who is that?
Yeah, I don't know, young guy.
Yeah,
You mentioned citations? Yes.
When the Coke came to manage the shows there, what was the demeanor of the citation?
Well, the ones that were okay, we took them down to the flight line where the show was going on. And there was no problem with it. Yeah, they were grateful. You know, they were going home. Okay. Well, thank you. You got some more of those pictures there? Yeah.
You want to?
Lots of money.
Yeah, Bill.
Oh,
A year.
did Bob Hope get over there while you were there?
Bob Hope was there when I was. He was in the Philippines when I was in the Philippines.
Did you get to see the show?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when you were mustered in to the Air Force, did they give you a direct commission? Did you have to go to some kind of
Direct commission.
We had nothing like that.
Second lieutenant?
Second lieutenant. Yeah. I spent 8 years in the Guards before joining the Air Force, so I'd had some experience around getting things like radar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you ought to.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into a guy by the name of Meckenbauer? He was a pilot.
No.
He was a POW.
Oh yeah.
Graduated from Chaminade High School in '60.
You said Linda.
Julie worked for him. Didn't you work for him?
Oh, they worked for him.
Out at the guard base?
No, down at ASC, at the headquarters.
Okay.
I just knew him, I didn't work for him.
But your life.
One of the, you know, we got a lot of wounded, and one time we got a second lieutenant, or first lieutenant in, who was a triple amputee. And his company had flown his wife from the States to the Philippines to be with him during that time. That was really something else, to have a company all chip in and pay for her expenses to come. He wasn't expected to live, but he did live, yeah. No problem at all, yeah.
Were you mostly all Air Force, or
That's just what I was gonna ask.
were you a mixture of Marines and?
No, all Air Force.
All Air Force.
Yeah.
Your crew was all Air Force and you're picking up grunts,
Yeah,
or what, okay?
yeah,
Did you treat them nice?
no.
No, I heard.
Well, if they had something to trade, yeah.
This picture, this is Vong Tao. There's a big Buddha. We fly over that all the time. It's hard to see that Buddha. It's a huge white Buddha, and we fly over top of that, coming back into Cameron Bay all the time.
It's a left-hand corner. Yeah.
Left, lower left-hand corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it.
Right
There it is.
Oh.
He disappeared.
That one.
Oh,
There he is.
there
There
you
he
go.
is.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Huge thing.
Yeah.
It's like touchdown Jesus.
So when we saw that, we knew we were close to home. Yeah.
See Buddha, you don't know it's there.
Right down.
Wow. I would have given anything for that kind of food back then.
How about the 100, F-100? Yeah, this is an F-100. There wasn't enough flight line for him. He ran off the flight line, crashed, and but he survived that crash.
Very, very small base,
Yeah.
and it's a
And,
Vietnamese base. We didn't have any luxuries.
So it wasn't.
It was
And
right-
this is the Mickey Mouse Fire Department. I called them. It was it was a little dinky fire department, and they're the ones that went out to help save the pilot out of that plane.
Oh.
And this is, I was dining in Da Nang. This is, along the shore of Da Nang. My neighbor from Texas was a helicopter pilot, and he was an instructor for the Vietnamese. And he had a Jeep to his own disposal, things like that. So I went up and visited him in Saigon, and so we went up to Da Nang, and this is along the shore, they have these little restaurant type things, so we stopped there for lunch. Had nice soup. I didn't get sick, I didn't get the runs from it, so it must've been all right.
Have a luxury.
They have
Yeah.
fresh fish.
Yeah,
Waterfront. right on the
yeah, waterfront dining, yes, that's what that was, yeah. This is, Christmas time, at Christmas time, this is a C7, and they painted all these C7s up with the Rudolph's red nose in the front.
Red nose.
The C7, airplanes have a nickname. The C7 was a caribou.
Caribou, yeah.
I don't know if it was made in Canada or what, but
Wildlife. Looks like a
Yeah.
goody bird there.
Yeah, our C7 for med evacuation flew out of Vung Tau, down south there where the Australians were. And one of the jobs I had was to instruct Australian nurses on air evacuation. Yeah, and I became an instructor and an examiner also.
Times are different now, I don't think they'd let them get away with that, would they?
What's that?
Times are different now, I don't think they'd let them get away with that.
I don't know, yeah. Well, of course, during the war, you get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot more lenient.
Yeah. And this is just a picture of Iraq, Republic of Korea, wounded. And we took them to the Philippines, I said all the time, because the Japanese wouldn't let them in to Japan for med evacuation. They still had that going on between the two races.
The Koreans,
Great.
Koreans, yeah,
the
Koreans and Japanese.
that's
Art. Yep, that's it.
Art.
Yeah.
The one thing, when I was stationed there in Bentui, the Koreans, they said that their men were trained so well that if they got wounded, they would be put in jail
Oh.
for
Yeah.
getting wounded, for being stupid.
Yeah, well, they were fearful of going back to Korea, especially if they wanted and couldn't take care of themselves because of that. One patient I had he was burned 90% of his body and he still survived. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And he was going back to Korea. He was afraid to go back because of the not being cared for, looked upon as they do, yeah. So, yeah. Other cultures are much different than ours when it comes to taking care of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you ever find out who the lady was? And was she an American, the pregnant lady?
No, I never found out who she was. No, she wasn't American. She was Vietnamese.
Really?
Yeah, and for us to go through all that,
Yeah.
she had to be high ranking. Her husband was high ranking or something. Yeah, they didn't tell us that though. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't having any ill effects from her pregnancy at all. Eclampsia or anything like that, and no labor. So, yeah.
Thank you for your service,
Yeah.
Arthur.
Thank you.
They usually get mementos, and this is one of the mementos I got when I left.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a map of Vietnam, and this is my squadron insignia, which they changed while I was there. This is my original shirt that I wore in Vietnam. And that's my insignia that I had when I was there. The reason why they changed it, they made a law that you couldn't be, these couldn't be outside the circle.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can see, this one, everything's inside the circle except for the squadron.
That's a law.
Yeah, military have laws. Yeah.
This is a silly question, but what did you guys do about haircuts and,
We had a barber shop there.
okay.
I mean,
Spots cut.
whenever at least the Air Force goes into a place, they build everything up. They put clubs and recreation and facilities and barber shops.
Outdoor showers, right?
Outdoor showers, yes, they had that, yeah.
And a buzz
Well,
cut.
Actually, I had a shower in my hooch, really. Yeah, we had, my hooch was, we had 4 guys in it, 2 on each side, and in the middle was a space that we had a shower and a couple sinks. Yeah, which was nice living, really.
compared
Compared
to
to
what we've had before that.
12 by 12, something like that. Those,
Oh, no, not that much, no. It was just enough for 2 bunks on one side and, maybe, space in the middle, about 2 feet and 2 feet on the other side.
I would have mice running all over.
But it was air conditioned.
Oh, it was air conditioned.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When,
We woke up.
the first night there, I slept in that one place, and then I found out that there was air conditioned quarters, but then I went down and find out how to get them, so they told me I had to get a letter from my commander saying that I flew at night. So I would fly at night, on emergency stuff, so I typed out a letter and said, here, sign this for me, will you? So I went down and I walked into the place and he said, yeah, sure, you can have quarters. And so I got a quarters and it was air conditioned, and about 3 or 4 days later, I ran into some of my buddies and they said, where you been? I said, how come you're not staying where we're at? I said, oh, I got air conditioned quarters. You got air conditioned quarters? I've been here 6 months and I didn't get them yet, How did you get them? So I showed everybody how to write a letter out and type up a letter and hand it into the building office and get air conditioned quarters.
You were a radar.
I was a radar,
I'm glad
yeah.
you classified that, cause she just told me, you should have went in the Air Force.
now he tells
Believe me, it all wasn't like this.
I believe radar
The
was
only air
patterned after
conditioning we
him.
had was air flowing through our van.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
there's
what they
40
had
of us
before
in that building.
before I found out that it could get the air conditioned quarters, yeah.
On the Philippines, we had a World War II barrack thing, was it barrack?
Oh, yeah, when I was medevac in the Philippines, we had the old World War II Quonset hut type thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
And what it was we had rooms, our own room, and it was all open. And there was like about that much nipa, which is, bamboo, or not bamboo, but palm leaves and stuff that they make like a fence around it, like a little bit. So close it off so you can have some privacy. But the top of it was just chicken wire. So the rain came right in through it a lot of times. And had a little closet. In the closet was a 150-watt bulb to keep your clothes dry. And yeah. But the ladies all had air conditioned quarters, of course.
Yeah, but when they tore them down.
They tore the Quonset hut down before I left, and the guy that lived next door to me said that he had found out that there was a 2,000-pound bomb in between our two hooches.
Oh,
Yeah. But it didn't go off. Of course, you know that because I'm still here.
They dismantled it.
Yeah,
See, it was a lot.
a live bomb. Yeah, left over World War II.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear. They probably buried it to hide it and
Yeah, probably.
build on top of it.
And then while we were there, over by there was jungle around the base and everything. They found a Japanese Zero plane next to the NCO club in the jungle that had been there since World War II, and this was in '66.
Wow.
Yeah, and they hadn't found it. Some kids found it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. in the
Yeah,
first
that's
place.
Yeah, it was quite an experience for Judy and I to live in the Philippines. Our kids were there, of course, with us, and we had a maid and we had a yard boy, which was really nice. They did the work, and in our housing area there was a big lot open, and when it rained, it filled up with water, and frogs would be there, and we'd go over and watch the ladies, the Filipino people, catch frogs. They'd have a little basket-like thing, and they have a pole with a line on it, and they just tie a worm on it, and the worms are probably that long, and they dangle that in front of the frog and pick it up and let it drop off in a bag, and then they mix it with the rice, or they dry it, mix it with the rice. Yeah. And during the rainy season, the next door lot to our house was empty, and there were so many peeper frogs in there and so noisy that Judy and I could hardly hear each other talk at night. Oh, it was terrible. Yeah.
Is it every night like that?
No, just during the rainy
During the
season,
rainy season.
yeah.
And then they had locusts. We had locusts come and rice bugs and oh my gosh.
Praying mantis, yeah.
Grasshoppers, praying mantis.
Of course, no, praying mantis, after the male and female mate, the female eats the head off of the male. So I built a little cage for our boys and got a couple of them and they watched the shenanigans.
Ah, brutal.
So happy, I'm getting mixed up with them.
And for entertainment at night, I turn on the carport light and watch the geckos eat all the flies and
Kids
stuff.
loved it, the kids loved it.
Did you eat on, or live on the economy, or?
On economy, yeah. Yeah.
And then we had like gates or walls around the house, but they were only waist high. And then all of a sudden one day, I'm going, there's buffalo coming down the street. They were going in the fields in the center of the housing area. The housing area is all closed in, so somehow they let them through there and they come down the street. The kids loved
The
it.
water buffalo, yeah.
Yeah, the water buffalo.
Yeah.
The kids loved it.
And we went out there, there's little kids standing up on top of the water buffalo.
Yeah, the kids would
Yeah.
get there.
And then the Khaleesi ponies,
And the ponies
they come
would
down
come
and
down
graze,
one
they
time.
graze them there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
sometimes the kids would go over and jump on one.
I said, nobody'd ever believe this in the whole world.
Any big snakes?
We
No, we never
saw
seen
it.
any snakes, no.
We never
You
saw
did?
it. Yeah, we saw it at we did at the,
Oh, at the Jungle Survival School, they had
Survival
big
School
snake.
had
You
it.
remember the name of it?
there's a huge.
They had an 18-foot snake there at
Yes,
the
was it a python?
Sea
or-
Survival. No, it wasn't,
No,
it
it
was
wasn't
a
a
boa
python.
constrictor, I think.
We had cobras.
Cobras?
Yeah, I had a few run-ins with those things.
Yeah.
We never saw any.
And
18 foot.
they jump up and do that dance. And one time, one did it, I blew it away. Scared the shit out of me. It carried the out of me. And I scared the shit out of him. But I was in trouble because I shot my weapon.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Oh, we were threatened with jail, Long Been jail, if we shot our weapon.
Huh.
Unauthorized.
Yeah, that was a problem over there. You had to have authorization for shooting and all that kind of
Even
stuff.
if we saw the enemy and they were setting up weapons.
Yeah. Man, that's the political war.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
politics
call back.
get
Is it
involved.
okay to shoot?
It was a policing action
Right, yes,
with B-52s.
yeah.
Oh, you mentioned rice bugs. If you went down to a village in the area, you would see a cart and they would be selling the rice bug for a couple of dong, which is like a penny. And the kids would buy these big rice bugs. They were big as my palm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would bite the head off and then suck the juices
Oh
out.
my
Yeah.
gosh. They didn't cook it?
No,
No?
we had them flying around by the hospital. We had lights on all around the hospital. And they come in, they'd fly around the hospital and then they'd fall on the ground. And then you drive over, it was like crunch, 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 crunch.
Yeah.
Is there still a base in the Philippines or not?
No, I don't know if Subic Bay is still alive or not.
Subic Bay there? I know.
Somebody asked me that the other day. I don't know if the Navy is still there, but the Air Force is out. Yeah.
I'm not sure the Navy gave that base up.
And one of the things at our house was cockroaches. But they didn't, what do they call them? They call them, palmetto beds,
No,
bugs.
they call them palmetto bugs in Florida.
That's right.
Yeah.
They were giant cockroaches.
Yeah.
But they came in, we didn't have them in the house, only the one time they came through the plumbing for some reason.
Yeah, there was a,
They were dive bombing over
we were sitting in the living room and
I said, nobody.
one would fly across the living room. Yeah.
We'll stay in the United States.
Roach.
My base was a Vietnamese base, and at night, we would have pillboxes and they would have pillboxes on the perimeter. And, we manned our our pillboxes and the towers, and the Vietnamese would be driven in,
Dug in?
they had these, well, it was a Japanese base, so they had concrete bunkers. And we made plywood bunkers filled with sand and such, and sandbags. But the Vietnamese would be out there all day, fighting the Viet Cong, or, out there in the jungle. And then truck them into the base and then put them at these pillboxes. And they would scavenge around to see if they could find a snake or a frog or some kind of critter to eat. And I mean, they would just build a little fire and stick a stick through an animal and put them right over the fire. And it was almost like, sushi. But it's frog sushi, or rat,
Delicacy.
or whatever.
Don't matter what it tastes like, it's food.
Yeah, they just burn the fur. They just burn the fur off all
Frog
around
legs.
and eat it.
They have frog legs at China Garden Buffet.
Uh-oh, you shouldn't say that. Lily, nobody will wanna go China buffet from now on, yeah.
I haven't been there in over 10 years.
No. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Yeah.